than J. Rue jacking off when he showers.
Hey you, yeah you, the fat guy in his mid-30s watching this video in his mom's basement. Have you ever heard of Eminem? Why am I even asking that question? Of course you have. Everybody's heard of Eminem. But what most people probably haven't heard of is his incredibly rare 1996 debut album, Infinite. What's that? You thought the Slim Shady LP was his first album?
Wrong!
I mean, yeah, the SSLP may have been his major label debut, but technically speaking, his official debut album is Infinite. Now, some of you people watching this video might be wondering why you've never heard of this album, especially considering how popular of a name M is, and I can't necessarily blame you. You see, the album was a commercial failure upon release. It was released on both cassette and vinyl, and M himself sold every copy out of the trunk of his car in Detroit. According to M, it only sold around 70 copies, but other sources say it was around a few hundred/1,000 copies. The few people who actually bought and listened to the album gave M shit for sounding like people such as Nas and AZ. It also hasn't had any digital remasters from what I can tell. You can find the album's title track on Spotify, and there was also a remix of said song released for the album's 20-year anniversary, but from what I was able to find, the rest of the album's nowhere to be found on Spotify. So with all that aside, how good is the album itself? Well, it's honestly kind of weird. Don't get me wrong, it's still a solid album. M's rapping and lyrics are still really great, as well as the production. I absolutely love the beats on here, and honestly, Con Artist is a really underrated and underappreciated producer. But honestly, this album kind of feels like it's missing something. Maybe it's the fact that it has nothing in common with the rest of his albums. You see, this was before he created his alter ego Slim Shady, so he doesn't really have his whole signature fuck the world attitude here, and it wasn't until 1997's Slim Shady EP when he finally did make that a part of his music. Not only that, but the content of the album itself doesn't really have that much substance to it. I mean, yeah, there are songs like Never Too Far and It's Okay, which talk about M's poverty and life struggles, but then there's also songs like Searchin' and Tonight, which have a more pop/R&B sound to them, and also sound a little more like Busta Rhymes or Tupac songs. I don't know, maybe I'm just so biased towards M's later stuff that it kinda makes me less interested in this album. It may seem like I'm hating on the album, but I'm really not. This is still a really solid album, and almost every song on here is a banger. There's really only a couple songs on here that I'm not a huge fan of, but we'll get to those later. You know what, why don't we look through each song right now, shall we? The opening and title track, Infinite, is probably one of, if not the best song on the entire album. It's so good. It literally sounds like the type of music you'd hear after you just died and are on a stairway to heaven. It has an absolutely beautiful beat. Not only that, but the rhyme scheme and wordplay here are just on a whole nother galaxy. Especially the more cartoons than animation line.
Examination of more cartoons than animation.
That gets me choked up every single time I hear it. This is definitely the perfect song to open up the album with, even if the rest of the album isn't necessarily quite as good.
Check it in on WEGO.
Okay, next we have the WEGO interlude, and I know it doesn't count as a song, but I wouldn't feel right not including it. It feels kind of unnecessary, but it's over within 20 seconds, so I don't necessarily mind it being here.
I wanna grow to be so old that I have to be carried.
Next there's It's Okay, and it's pretty good, and also kinda wholesome. It showcases M's everyday struggles while also showcasing his optimism for the future. The beat's really nice and relaxing, and the hook especially adds to the song's wholesomeness.
It's a broke day, but everything is okay. I'm up all night, but everything is alright. It's a rough week, and I don't get enough sleep. It's a long year, pretending I belong here.
It's songs like this that make me feel slightly better about life in general.
Hetero sex, unaffordable medical debts.
Tonight is a fucking banger. The beat is catchy as hell, and once again, the rhyming is excellent. I know I said earlier that this doesn't really sound like an Eminem song, and the subject matter might not be all that interesting, but honestly, I don't really care because either way, this song kicks major ass. Okay, so I know I said Infinite was my favorite song on here, but as for the song with the best wordplay and rhyme schemes, that definitely goes to 313. Seriously, I can't even describe how great the wordplay here is. Both M and Q's verses here are fantastic, and it's one of those types of duets where each artist is just as great as the other. Their dynamic on this song is absolutely incredible here, and even if it's not my favorite song on the album, it's definitely in the top 3. Also, this is completely unrelated to the song itself, but when I first listened to the album, I initially thought that this and Tonight were on the opposite track list order, because the full upload of the album that I listened to had them in that order, and because that singular video is the only full version of the album that I've ever heard, it took me up until first reading the Wikipedia and Genius track lists to realize that they weren't in the correct order. Now I honestly kind of wish that they were in that order, because Tonight sounds way better coming after 313 in my opinion. Anyway, moving on.
Maxine, who needs a vaccine?
Next we have Maxine, and it's just kinda average. It's the first of the 2 songs on here that I said I'm not too big on. I mean, yeah, the beat's pretty nice and relaxing, and M and Con Artist's verses are pretty good. But 3's verse drags on for a little too long, and it doesn't help that his voice is kind of annoying.
I met this girl last week, she was a freak, she liked me, so I pushed up on her and asked my homie.
I have literally no idea why they made his verse longer than the other 2's, but whatever, the song is fine, I guess.
You bitches get a hysterectomy, me, disrespecting me.
Open Mic is another one of my top 3 favorites off this album, mainly because of the beat alone. Seriously, the beat on this song might be the catchiest one on the entire album. Not only that, but I really love the hook, mainly because of how Thyme literally sounds like he's on the verge of tears. It's just hilarious.
Hey, yo, who the fuck passed you the mic and said that you can flow? What about bitch, I wanna know?
I don't really even have that much to say about it. It's just a lot of fun, and I get a huge kick out of it every time I hear it.
Dream of having a turn to earn money to burn.
Never Too Far is pretty much just It's Okay, but a little more motivational, as well as having the wholesomeness amped up to 11. M still talks about how much he hates being poor and how much he wishes that he'll have a better future, but this time it has the twist of him telling the listener that there's always the possibility that they can also get really far in life.
No matter wherever you are, you're never too far from revenue bar. Cause you can be king, you can rule the world, you can do anything. It's on you, baby, cause you can be a star.
It has a pretty nice beat, and it's a little better than It's Okay, and yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about it.
I bet an edible underway.
Searchin' is probably the weirdest song here. Not because it's bad or anything, but because it's the exact opposite of pretty much all of M's later stuff. Just from the beat and hook alone, you can just tell that this sounds absolutely nothing like an Eminem song. For one thing, it's a love song, and for another thing, there's absolutely no cursing in it, which is incredibly out of character for M. But anyway, as for the song itself, it's fine, I guess. Just like Tonight, the subject matter's not that interesting, but the beat is so good that it makes up for it completely. Although the beat on here is nowhere near as good as Tonight's beat. Also, fun fact, this is apparently the only song on the album that was played by any Detroit radio station, so that's something, I guess. Whatever, let's just move on.
Check it to girl's house, he was last seen there.
Backstab is another really fun song. What's it about? Well, it's a sequel to the song Fucking Backstabber, which was by the group Soul Intent off their self-titled third mixtape. Both songs are subliminal disses towards the rapper Champtown. You see, around this time, M accused Champ of trying to get with his at-the-time girlfriend and eventual wife Kim. As a result, the two had a falling out. In this song, Champ is portrayed as an escaped convict, and M is a detective who's trying to capture him and bring him back to the psych ward. And like I said, it's really fun. It's got a really engaging story, as well as some really zany energy. It's not Slim Shady LP levels of crazy, but it's still fun nonetheless. It's one of the few songs on here that I could actually imagine being on that album. It's another really banger song, and it's probably the most interesting song on here. Too bad I can't say that about the next song. Yeah, Jealousy Woes 2 was not very good. Probably the weakest song on the album. It's not necessarily bad, it's just not very interesting. It's just kind of your typical gold-digging girlfriend song, and it's not really all that appealing to me. If I could name any positives, it would be that 1, the beat is sort of alright, and 2, the Nas sample in the second verse is kind of clever.
So I confronted you and asked you who was Mike, and you was like,
I need a new nigga.
Plus, I do find it kind of funny how the best song is the opening song and the worst song is the closing one. But aside from that, this song is just kind of okay. Here's my personal ranking for each song right here. So yeah, like I said, Infinite's a pretty good album, but it's not that great of an introduction to M, or his personality. I still recommend this album, but if you're a newer fan and don't really know which album to start with, I'd maybe recommend starting with the Slim Shady LP first. Well, that was my Infinite review, and now I'm gonna go take an infinite nap now. Get it? Ah, shut up, you uncultured swines. Whatever, I'm just gonna go die now.